The 592nd edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the arms. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Just Josh here with you on this Thursday night. ACC Tip-Off has come and gone. Carolina was in Charlotte back on Tuesday, and we're here to recap everything that the Tar Heels had to say during their day with the local and assembled media. Some national media members were in town for ACC Tip-Off as well. And so Hubert Davis, Seth Trimble, and Henry Visar made the rounds during the day. And we're here to bring you some audio from those guys here today. We will not have preseason voting results. Those will be released next Tuesday. So expect another edition of the podcast to come your way on Tuesday where we will react to see where Carolina was preseason ranked in the ACC and if they have any guys that were picked to be first, second all ACC members, and all that fun stuff. So some more preseason content will be coming your way here in the coming weeks. But tonight we'll come through some more audio from the Tar Heels during their busy day in Charlotte. Before we get to that, though, we start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day, which, of course, is now brought to you by our sponsor, Legacy Arcade. Let me tell you a little about Legacy Arcade. Legacy Arcade and Social Casino is where you can win cash prizes with roulette, blackjack, your favorite slot games, and multiplayer fish games. You can also win prizes playing your favorite arcade games, and you use that promo code you see right there on your screen. If you scan it, take a picture of it, whatever, and use that promo code HEELS, what that'll do is it'll get you up to $100 free in match play at registration. And the best part about Legacy Arcade is that it's safe, secure, with 24-hour customer support, instant redemption immediately to your bank account or your credit card, and then they accept all major credit cards, Skrill and ACH. And if you're an iPhone user and you live and die with Apple Pay is coming very soon to Legacy Arcade. So get over to you scan that QR code. Sign up, use that promo code, and really take a great advantage of this great offer. We're glad to have Legacy Arcade on board with us here at the Four Corners podcast as well over at the Heel Tough Blog podcast. So what is the pod thought of the day? Well, the pod thought of the day comes from George Allen, and that thought is, quote, "The future is now. If we do proper things today, we will win today, and we will also win tomorrow." I think that sometimes we can be so concerned about the future that it never comes, end quote. Really great quote here about being present in the moment. And for Carolina, look, we want to win a lot in the future, but that means you got to win today. And, especially I think in college basketball now where you've got the preseason practices that you have where you're basically on the court for almost a month and a half before you play your first regular season game. You have a chance to play in 2 exhibitions where Carolina will play on the road against BYU. They'll host Winston-Salem State, in addition to some scrimmages that they held last week in Chapel Hill, next weekend in Cherokee. So there's a lot of time for them to really set the foundation for the type of team they're going to be. But that means you got to win the days in practice. If you win in practice, that means you'll win in the games. And that means if you win today, that means that you'll win tomorrow and on into the future and so on and so forth. So a really great quote there from George Allen, brought to you by Legacy Arcade, the new sponsor of the pod thought of the day. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get to the assembled audio that I picked out for you guys. I got 13 audio cuts we're going to run through. You'll hear from Hubert Davis. You'll hear from Seth Trimble. You will not hear from Henry Visar, mainly because he didn't say a whole lot that he didn't already say when he had his media availability a few weeks ago. If you missed that edition of the podcast, we encourage you to go check it out. Also, when he was in his breakout room, where the best audio usually comes from, very low, could very hardly hear him. And so you're just going to hear from Hubert Davis. You're just going to hear from Seth Trimble, but both of those guys had plenty to say. So what we'll do, we'll start with the head coach of Carolina basketball. We'll start with Hubert Davis, and I've got audio from 3 different areas. I've got audio from the breakout room, a cut when he was with the guys from the Field of 68, and then when he did an interview with David Glenn over at North Carolina Sports Network. We'll start with the breakout room, and, with R.J. Davis gone, no more Armando Bacot, Leaky Black, and all those guys. What that means is there's no longer a tie from the Roy Williams era to the Hubert Davis era. And Hubert Davis was asked about not having any Roy Williams players on his roster anymore.
It's really strange and different. I talked to RJ the other night. He scored 14 in the first preseason game and then 11. And just walking out on the court, there's no Leaky, there's no Armando, there's no RJ. And it is weird not to have them out here, but then on the backside it's pretty cool that those guys, all of them, stayed an extra year, all 5 years at one institution, and I was a part of all 5 of those years, whether as an assistant or as a head coach.
Yeah, it definitely is weird, and luckily Carolina is a special enough place where those guys, because of the COVID extra year, they wanted to stay, and they wanted to play 5 years at Carolina, not enter the portal and go somewhere else. I think for me, as big as a Roy Williams fan as I was, it was easier going through that transition of seeing the coach that I knew and loved no longer being on the sidelines, but seeing guys that he recruited to come play here be on the sidelines right there or be on the court for Hubert Davis. It did make that transition, I think, a little bit easier. It also helped that those guys gave us some fond memories. They won some of the biggest games in the history of Carolina basketball. But it is officially time for, Hubert Davis to put his stamp on this program because these are all now 100% Hubert Davis guys. And for a lot of people that have maybe defended Hubert, they've said, hey, look, you can't really evaluate him until Roy's holdovers are no longer here. Well, that time has come. Unfortunately, it comes in a year where it feels like Hubert's got to produce in a big way, or we could be talking about his job security at the end of March. But nonetheless, we've made it to that time. This is Hubert Davis's roster. This is Hubert Davis's program, and he has his fingerprints all over Carolina basketball in a way that maybe he couldn't have with, Roy's holdover still on the roster during his first 4 seasons. With that, though, with R.J. Davis being gone, the program's number 2 all-time leading scorer, there is a void about who's going to be the guy that you look to take that big shot, to make that big shot in the final 4 minutes of the ball game. And Hubert Davis was asked about who that guy would be right now if the season started today.
The guy who's going to make it. I don't know. But I think we have a number of guys that can shoot it and can make it. I really do. And that is a strange thing, and not having Armando and RJ. You had 2 guys, even Harrison and Cormac, that, in those type of situations, they wanted it and they could make it. And now it's time for others to emerge, and I'm confident that we'll have a number of guys that are able to do that.
The best part is right now, Carolina has a multitude of different options. If I had to bet money who that first option would be, I do think it would be probably Luka Bogavats, then maybe Seth Trimble, Caleb Wilson, down to Kyan Evans, which, if Carolina finds themselves in a close game against Kansas or Michigan State, whoever it is in the non-conference, it's going to make it tougher on that opponent to figure out who to try to take away. Whereas last year, you knew who that guy was going to be. Everyone in the gym knew who that guy was going to be, and it's why Carolina struggled in those situations. So while that's a blessing in disguise, I think early on in the year, I do think that by the time you get into conference play, you've got to have a guy that you can run a set for and get a bucket. I've kind of compared with the way this roster's built and how many different options it's going to be to kind of what you saw in 2011, 2012 with that quartet of Marshall, Barnes, Zeller, Henson. If you want to make it, a quintet and add Reggie Bullock, you feel free. And the best part about that group is that you had a multitude of different options, but by the end of that year, and really by the end of Harrison Barnes' freshman year, Harrison Barnes morphed into the guy that was going to take that shot. You're talking about a guy that made a game winner on the road at Florida State, what he did in his ACC tournament as a freshman, leading that comeback against Clemson. And so I think it could be a benefit to Carolina in November, in December. By the time you get to February, by the time you get to March, you need to have a guy that you can run a set or 2 for to get him a look that you need when you need to get a bucket. And hopefully that guy emerges as the season does move along. Let's move on to a freshman that, Hubert's about to talk about here. And this is the guy we'll talk about a lot more on tomorrow night's edition of the podcast. Programming note, we'll be back live tomorrow on a Friday night. John Rothstein, CBS Sports College Basketball Insider, was in town earlier this week. He had a full breakdown takeaway from his visit with Carolina at practice. We're going to talk about that. And one of the things John Rothstein talked about was Derek Dixon. And Hubert Davis was asked about what makes Derek Dixon so special as an incoming freshman.
Well, you talk about positional size, like he's 6'5", is real, and really good defender, can play multiple positions, he can handle, he can make plays off the bounce, whether score, distribute, he can come off screen, staggers, wide pins, flares, excellent rebounder, and a very confident player. As a freshman, I was never that confident as he is, and it allows him to play at a high level, and I've been really pleased at the way that he is practiced to start the season.
Look, I've talked about it there. I thought the addition of Jaden Young was very beneficial because I think it takes the pressure off Derek Dixon and not have to be that backup point guard right away. But I do think he's going to play, I would say, significant minutes. I think he'll play 12 to 16 minutes a night in the non-conference season. What does it look like when you get into conference play? I don't know, but given just his competitiveness, his size, and I think just how efficient he can put the ball in the basket, it's going to be hard to keep him off the floor. And so I love the state of Carolina's backcourt. You've got Kyan Evans, you've got Seth Trimble. I think Jaden Young's an underrated addition. But I think these freshmen are going to be really good in their first years as well on campus. And I think Derek Dixon is maybe poised to have a bigger role than maybe we thought he was going to have coming into the season. Let's get to another quote from Hubert Davis about not necessarily a newcomer, but a guy that's rejoining the program. Of course, if you don't know by now, Zayden High missed all of last year, a university suspension, but he's back. He's back on the roster for this year. Hubert Davis was asked twice about the situation, basically just refused to answer and said, all I can say is that he's a member of this team and we're happy that he's here. But he was kind of asked about, okay, well, he took a year off. Where does his game look different from the last time we saw Zayden High on the court in Carolina Blue?
Well, I mean, Zayden, he's a versatile big that can do a number of things out there on the floor. Defensively, he can guard multiple positions. He's an excellent rebounder. He's a great offensive rebounder. He has the ability to shoot the ball from the outside, but also he's a willing and instinctive passer. And so you bring all those different things alongside his size. It's a huge benefit for us. I'm excited to see what he does this year.
I do think that's a good point that Coach Davis brings up, is that the ball doesn't stick in his hands. For him to be such a young player, having played, just 1 year at the collegiate level, and those were reserve minutes at the most, he did have a pretty good feel to move the ball, and it didn't stick in his hands. And look, we saw him in the blue-white game. You saw him take a three, and it looked fluid. It was pretty. That's what he's going to be asked to do. The biggest thing I noticed while watching him was much more under control. Was a lot more confident and assured of where he was supposed to be in his defensive positioning, in his rebounding technique, and not just, flailing all over the place, committing fouls, and doing things that could hurt the team. And I think for a guy that is working his way back, and is going to have to, I think re-earn the trust of the fans, let alone his coaches and his teammates. Doing the little things and helping this team win are going to be ways to get him back in good graces. It sounds like he's done that so far during the first, handful of practices they've had since the start of preseason practice back at the end of September. Let's get to a cut about a transfer. A lot of talk around Jonathan Powell was centered around his ability to space the floor and shoot the three and what he could do for Carolina in transition. And that's still going to be his most valuable asset. But what got me excited even more about him as an addition to this roster is this next cut from Hubert Davis, where Hubert Davis talked about how he stood out to him defensively when they were evaluating him when he entered the portal back earlier this offseason.
I saw that on tape when we were evaluating him and recruiting him. It's even more real in person. He's a physical defender. He can guard multiple positions. He can keep the ball in front of him. He's a good defensive rebounder, and he's competitive on the defensive end. Like, as good as he is at shooting, he's even more competitive or as equal to getting stops and getting after it defensively. And I've told him that, and I've just been really happy with him and his production on both ends of the floor to start the season.
There's two ways to make an impact in the game of basketball. The first one is obvious, put the ball through the hoop. The second one is defend your butt off and play defense at a high level. If you do both of those things at the same time, that's when you enter that special player category. And look, I'm not saying he's going to be a 20-point per game scorer, but there's a scenario where Jonathan Powell averages 8 to 10 points per game, shoots 40% from three, but is just as big of an asset defensively as he is offensively. And that should excite you. Carolina's got to they have to be better this year defensively on the perimeter. And you can add all the size and the length that you want to make yourself better defensively. And you do need to have that. But defense comes down to effort. Do you want to get in a stance, or do you want to guard? Do you want to slide your feet? Do you want to fight through that ball screen? Do you want to rotate and communicate the way that you have to? And it feels like this team has bought in more on that end of the floor than there was a year ago, which should make you feel kind of the way we felt 2 years ago when that was Carolina's calling card. When Hubert Davis won an ACC regular season title, was a 1 seed in the tournament and went to the Sweet 16, it was because of what Carolina did defensively. They could score the ball. And you had, R.J. Davis, one of the best guard seasons in the history of Carolina basketball. You had Armando Bacon, a 15-9 big man. You had Harrison Ingram. You had Cormac Ryan. You had those guys. But defense fueled their offense. And while I don't think this team is built that way, I think this team is built to play in the open floor, and they're built to play and win games in the 80s and the 90s. It's refreshing to know that if they get into that game on the road where the game's going to be played in the 60s, they're going to be tough enough to win that style game. And that's when you've got a good team, man. It's something I talk about so much is being able to win in a multitude of different ways, not being refined to just being able to win shootouts. Can you win when you shoot 35% from the field and 27% from the three-point line? Because you're going to have nights where the ball just doesn't go in the hoop. Are you tough enough mentally and physically to find another way to win? And it feels like right now this Carolina team is adapting that. And that's going to go, I think, a lot further than maybe you realize as we sit here in early October. A few more quotes from Hubert Davis before we'll turn our attention to rising senior guard Seth Trimble. The basketball program held the blue-white scrimmage, of last weekend in Chapel Hill. They'll be on the road in Cherokee. It's October 17th and 18th. For tickets and information about that, visit GoHeels.com. They were supposed to do this a year ago, but the Hurricane Helene, obviously made that not possible. And Hubert Davis spoke about the importance of taking the program back to the western part of the state.
I think it's really important. I wish we could do more of this around the state. It's different now because all of our games are televised, so anybody can see it. But to be able to go there up to Asheville and be able to go up there and play in front of those residents that still, a lot of them still don't have their homes, have utilities, and to be able to spend time and just serve and give back. That's all it is going up there and serving and giving back. And I'm so thankful that we had an opportunity to go back up there this year, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, really glad that they made this a priority. And, Hubert, since the day he took the job as the head coach, has talked about, this is his mission field. And yes, winning games is ultimately his biggest and most important job. But, I don't know if we've ever seen a coach, and this is not a knock on Dean Smith or Roy Williams, that just emphasized giving back to the community as much as Hubert. And I think it's why I've become even more endeared to him because, he cares as much as anyone that we've ever seen about the Carolina community and the fabric of it. And he understands the impact that Carolina basketball can have on people across the state. And so for an opportunity for him to get it through to his team that it's about giving back to others and serving others is really cool. It's really neat. And that's a lot easier to celebrate when you're winning. So hopefully, Coach, y'all have a great time out there in Cherokee. You give back to that community that's still hurting and still trying to pick up the pieces from a natural disaster. And another way to uplift their spirits is to put the type of team on the floor we can be proud of and wrap our arms around for 35, 40 nights this upcoming basketball season, and really grow to enjoy and love watching play as the season moves along. So that's all from Hubert Davis from the breakout room. We'll now move to a quote during his time with the Field of 68. A lot of hype is starting to build around Caleb Wilson as, the local and the national media get more of a glimpse at him in practice. And He simply told the guys when he sat down with them, the hype around the incoming 5-star freshman, it's real.
I mean, he's obviously gifted. His size and versatility, he's an excellent passer. He can score. His mid-range game is real. He can guard different positions. He can block and alter shots. Outside of that, the biggest thing for him, I really believe this, and I've said this a couple times today. If he ran for student body president, I think he might win. He loves Carolina, loves being a part of this team and this program, and loves being in college. He's the best teammate. I'm telling you, if he sat down at this table, the lights would be brighter than they are right now. He just lights up a room when he gets in there, and he wants to learn. He would go to you, John, and go, tell me what you see. Tyler, he will go to you and say, well, how can I get better? And he would look you in the eye. And for a guy who's a 5-star who has been celebrated so much, to be in a position to listening and learning, you don't see that very much. And so it's real.
We got to see how it all plays out. And I think it would go a long way for Carolina that he hits so they can continue to recruit the type of talent that Caleb Wilson possesses into their program. But I've said this all offseason. This is the ideal 5-star that Hubert Davis wants to add on an annual basis. He's going to be a one-and-done talent, and not that one-and-dones win in college basketball anymore, but having that type of talent on your roster goes a long way to competing for regular season and national championships. But he's invested. He's got 2 feet in, there's not 1 foot in and 1 foot out. When we went to the TCU game, we were at the pregame concert. Guess who was there? It was Caleb Wilson, being a part of the community, being part of a big Carolina moment at that time. He's talked so much about restoring the program and wanting to be a big reason why they get back to glory and winning ACC regular season titles, tournament titles, and being 1 seeds and going to Final Fours. He's embraced all of that. And so, for fans that, maybe have a hard time wanting to embrace a one and done, embrace this young man, because he's embraced everything that Hubert Davis has asked him to while being the most gifted player on the roster at Carolina. And if you didn't hear our takeaways from the blue-white game, go back, listen to that edition of the podcast. Guys, I was drooling. The talent and the potential, it's evident. His back to the basket game to be 18 years old is as good as I've seen in quite some time. His face-up game is tremendous. He's got a quick step. His ability to create separation is really impressive. He competes for loose balls and screens and communicates, and he's going to be a real fun player to watch. And we're probably going to have him for just 1 year, but it's going to be, I think, a big-time year for him individually, and hopefully that translates over to overall team success as well. One last quote from Hubert Davis before we'll move on and hear from Seth Trimble. If you're from the area, you're probably familiar with David Glenn, longtime sports talk host in the area. He's left radio, is off running his own site now, the North Carolina Sports Network. Does a phenomenal job covering college athletics as well as anybody that you're going to find. And obviously something new to Carolina is the addition of Jim Tanner. You've got the GM that's installed and in place. That was made official back. Really, the Carolina announced they were going to hire one in February. It became official, I think, in March. And so he was asked kind of about his relationship with Jim Tanner and kind of how his role differs from being a GM in college as opposed to what you see at the professional level.
You now have a general manager. How does that work? In the pros, the GM makes a draft pick and the coach is told which guys to coach. In college, I imagine your GM needs to hear from you and your staff, which guys you want on the recruiting trail, and it seems to be a different type of relationship.
Well, I'm so thankful that Jim decided to leave his agency that he was a part of for 27 years. He's a UNC alum. He has a passion and desire for this program to be good, and it's been great. We have a great relationship, and it's been really good being able to acclimate him into our coaching staff, into our program, and I'm so thankful that he's a part of it.
How does the back and forth work in terms of just identifying players to pursue for the Tar Heels?
Well, I mean, as I said before, Jim and I have a tremendous relationship. The great thing for me is I was 5 years ago named head men's basketball coach at the University of North Carolina, and that's my job. And so I always believe in keeping my eyes straight ahead on what is real, and what is real is for me to help this team become the best team that it can possibly could become.
Yeah, so look, we don't really know exactly what his role is. I imagine he's very involved with the collective bargaining side, how they're going about distributing the money that they have allotted from revenue sharing to the roster. Do I think he's evaluating prospects? No, I don't. I do think that's still more of the coaching staff and the other front office members that they have added here over the summer. I think those are more of what's happening, but he's going to be an important role and an important factor for Carolina. And I know some people were critical of the hire. You have a guy with 27 years of agency experience in your front office. How many other teams in college basketball can say that? And with Hubert, to work for him, you got to be a Carolina guy. Jim Tanner is, and I think it's important that they have the relationship that they have, because they may not be joined at the hip, but you'd rather them get off to the right foot as opposed to maybe they're already being the type of dysfunction we're seeing on the football side of things with Bill Belichick and Michael Lombardi. Before we get to what Seth Trimble had to say, did want to just read some comments from those of you that are joining us live, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. My guy Greg Ward popped in and say, "Hey Josh, Greg, awesome seeing you back in here once again. Just want to reiterate, it was awesome meeting you at the Blue-White game. Hopefully to meet you, or get a chance to talk to you again soon in person at a football game or a basketball game here in the coming months." My guy Ned Yates said maybe a huge difference in the volume of host and the coach's comments. Ned, that's my fault. Not a whole lot I can do about that. That's the problem with that breakout room audio, is sometimes it's not the best. But hopefully those last few quotes from him were a lot easier for you to hear. And we got some comments on YouTube from Michael Daniels. Do you know what this team cost us this year? $18 million. Is it Sweet 16 or bust? I think the official number came out at about $14 million. Nonetheless, that's a lot of money. But Carolina has 11 new players, and all 11 players are getting paid, some sort of amount of money. So that number is a little bit more inflated. When it comes to Sweet 16 or bust, kind of what I said he has to do is either win an ACC regular season, ACC tournament title, or make the second weekend to really solidify himself. And I have to maybe sweat out a meeting or two after the season does come to an end. And I think the good news is, Michael, is I think that they're very possible, very attainable of achieving that. I think they could finish, if they won the ACC, it would maybe be a mild surprise, because I'm really high on Louisville. Duke's going to be really good. I wouldn't be surprised if they find themselves there in the second weekend. And then the last comment from Michael Daniels on YouTube: what are your thoughts on what the Wolfpack had to say about Davis? Look, man, we know if we know anything about NC State, we know that they're going to talk. Will Wade's going to talk. Darian Williams is going to talk. And look, Darian Williams is a fantastic player. What he said about Van Allen Lubin, I think, is kind of incorrect. Van Allen Lubin wanted and demanded more money when he entered the portal. At the time, because revenue sharing had not yet been made legal, Carolina was tapped. Carolina had no more money to give, and they had agreed to, at bare minimum, the same amount of money they paid him a year ago, where they really overpaid him for a third of a year's worth of production. So I don't feel like Carolina did him any wrong. Maybe that was him alluding to them recruiting Henry Visar over him, but I think Henry Visar is a better basketball player than Van Allen Lubin. And so I don't really care about that, as opposed to what he alluded to when it came to Kerwin Walton. Don't really know the backstory on that, if I'm being completely honest. Kerwin Walton was a good player his 1 year here, shot the three really, really well. That's all he did. Did not play defense, did not pass the ball, didn't really bring any other value. And when you look what happened after Carolina moved on from Kerwin Walton, how can you be upset about him? Without him on the roster, Carolina went to a Final Four. Carolina played for the national championship. They won an ACC regular season title and made the Sweet 16. So I know he enjoyed some success down there in Lubbock, but I guess we'll have to wait and see kind of what Kerwin Walton feels like. Hubert Davis did him wrong, but I don't really have a whole lot to say about what the Wolfpack had to say other than that's what they do best. That's what they're going to do under Will Wade, and that's why when we beat them in February, it's going to be as sweet as it's been in quite some time. All right, let's now get to Seth Trimble before we get out of this edition of the podcast. I've got 5 sound bites from, the proverbial leader for Carolina basketball this upcoming season. And the good news, Ned, all of these are not from his time in the breakout room. There are 4 quotes with him with David Glenn and 1 with the Field of 68. And the first one we'll get to is he was asked about what's more important to have on the roster, talent or chemistry. And I think you'll find his answer just as interesting as I did.
Fans will ask, is it mostly about talent or is it mostly about chemistry? Or does one matter? They both matter. Does one matter more than the other?
I think chemistry matters the most out of everything. If chemistry didn't matter and it was just about talent, then my group from my freshman year, I think, would have won every single game that we played. But it's all about chemistry for the most part. Talent goes a long way, but I think we've seen, less talented teams win a national championship because they have that bond, that chemistry, and that unity for each other.
Is there room for you to make the observations to them that you just made to us? I mean, you're having fun, you're going to the Outer Banks, you're playing games, you're enjoying Chapel Hill. Is there time for you to express what you just expressed to us to them so maybe they can learn from it?
Absolutely. They know how important it is. We've been on that all year. From the second these guys have got on campus, I made a priority. The walk-ons that are still here made a priority. James Brown, our other returner, made a priority. And we've just been able just to gel with each other, to just love on each other and just bond really, really well. So, everybody knows how important it is to us, and we're just continuing to build that chemistry each and every day.
Used to be you had natural moments where teams came together. Kind of like what you see in Remember the Titans, where they're practicing late at night, and Gary Bertier and Julius Campbell, they finally come together. They become the leaders for what would become the special season for that football team during some difficult circumstances. You don't have that luxury really anymore. You got to force it. And that's why you see Carolina do so many different team bonding events. Not that they didn't used to do them in the past, but it was just natural. Well, we're going to go here. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. But now you're doing that in hopes that you can make these and get these guys to come together even quicker because, when Carolina was preseason number 1 a few years ago, from a talent perspective, that team should have done a whole heck of a lot more than what they did, failing to make the tournament, so on and so forth. But it wasn't the same group that came within a rebound away from winning the national title the previous year. There was a disconnect. There was a lack of trust in that locker room, and it torpedoed an entire season. Don't think it was to the same degree last year. I do think last year was more of a roster issue for Carolina, but there were some chemistry issues as well with, I think mainly a guy like Ian Jackson never buying into his role when he got moved to the bench, even though Carolina benefited from him coming off the bench as opposed to him being a starter. And so you got to have talent, but you got to have that talent play cohesively as one unit. Goes back to that, that pod thought we use all the time. Basketball is a beautiful game when 5 players are playing as one with one heartbeat. You got to get to that. And, they're still working towards that. When you got 11 new faces, it's not going to happen overnight. But it does feel like they're in a really good spot with, just about a month or so before the regular season does tip off. Well, you heard him in that answer talk about the trip to the Outer Banks. And, David Glenn did follow up and talk about the importance of that trip. That's become an annual tradition for the basketball program.
What importance did you place on a trip to the Outer Banks as a bunch of young guys, or maybe other team-building exercises that we're not even aware of on the outside?
I think that Outer Banks trip was a huge turning point for us. And not a turning point in saying that we were, bad chemistry-wise or anything like that before that, but just a turning point in saying, we took a huge step in the right direction and got even better, got even closer, loved on each other even more, bonded even more. I mean, that trip was huge for us. I mean, I feel like we left that trip and we were all like, this is a group of best friends.
That's a really good sign, man. That's the leader of your team telling you, hey, I noticed a difference in the team we were before we went and the team that we were when we got back from going to the Outer Banks. And, they do a good job, I think, giving us a behind the scenes glimpse. They do put some social media stuff up as well. And this does appear to be a group that's going to be fun. They're going to love each other. They're going to play for one another. And I think that goes a long way because it feels like Carolina. And the one thing I've kind of said when it's not been sunshine and rainbows under Hubert, it hasn't felt like Carolina basketball. And we take that for granted because for how many years under Coach Smith and Roy Williams, you never noticed a different vibe. But you have in this new era. But it does feel like this year does kind of feel like throwback Carolina basketball. A few more quotes from Seth, and then we will get out of this edition of the podcast. Let's get to one of the transfers that he'll be sharing the backcourt with. My man crush from the offseason, Kyan Evans. Trimble talked about what he's seen so far from the Colorado State transfer.
Kyan has been an amazing floor general for us. He's embraced everybody. He wants to learn everybody and, understand where guys like to get their catches from, where guys like to get their shots from, where, the bigs, how they roll the most. I mean, he's just done a huge and incredible job on just really diving in on his teammates and getting just to understand that, him being a floor general, that's what he has to do. That's what he has to do. And we're not putting any pressure on him about, Carolina point guard or anything like this and that. We're just asking Kyan Evans to be Kyan Evans.
That's a real good thing that they're asking him to be himself, play within the construct of what your game allows you to be. The good news is I think he's the perfect guard for Carolina, and the subtle differences and changes that Hubert Davis has made as the head coach of the program. He likes to play in the open floor. He gets the ball up and down the court in a very quick manner. He's always looking to pass first. He's got a head up. He's got a quick dribble. He's a quicker version, I think, of Kendall Marshall with the way that he can get the ball up and down the floor. But they're going to need him to score. He's got to learn how to play off of Seth Trimble. That's where that chemistry, that bonding really does come into play here. He's going to be sensational. And I'm really truly cannot wait to see him play. Obviously, the guy I'm most excited to see is Caleb Wilson because he's the most gifted player on the roster. Number two, maybe it's Luka because we've never seen someone like him play at Carolina. But then it's Kyan Evans, man. And part of it's because I've put a lot of expectations upon him, but I think he's going to be great. And I think he's finding his footing in Chapel Hill, which is a good sign to see. Speaking of Caleb Wilson, it's going to be interesting to see what preseason accolades he gets when they do release the preseason voting next Tuesday. But Seth Trimble said he's more than capable of being an all-ACC caliber player.
Absolutely. I'd say, and I know Caleb Wilson can easily be an all-ACC caliber type of player. I don't like putting that pressure on him or anything like that, but I tell Caleb, you just continue to do you play your game, and you continue just to embrace his university and your teammates, and you're going to go a long way. I mean, Caleb, he's incredible. Watching him over the summer, watching him during the preseason. When he has that motor and he's playing with that will and want to, he's a pretty hard guy to defend.
It's probably a good thing I was not awarded a ballot for the preseason voting, even though I was credentialed to be at the event, because I would vote him an all-ACC member. I think he's going to be that good. I really do. And I know there's a lot of great freshmen that are joining the league this year. A couple of twins at Duke. I know Louisville's bringing in some highly regarded players as well. I think Caleb Wilson is going to be just as good, if not better, than all those guys. And I'm not going to be surprised when he's on an all ACC list. And I think if he's an all ACC member, that bodes well for Carolina, maybe more so if Seth Trimble is an all ACC guy or Kyan Evans is. Because if he is, then you are maximizing his talent. And he's the most talented player on the roster. And Seth Trimble could be an all ACC guy because he averages 18 points per game, but Carolina is not as good as a team because they don't have the other pieces around him playing at the way they need him to play at. If Caleb Wilson is an all ACC guy, it's because he's playing to the level of his talent. And he's talented enough and gifted enough to, I think, really carry Carolina to a top 2 ACC finish this upcoming year. The final quote from Seth comes from his time with the Field of 68, coming off a year where Carolina was preseason top 10 and got bounced in the first round of the tournament after having to win a game in Dayton to make the round of 64. He said they can't help but feel the internal pressure while being members of the Carolina basketball program.
An amazing job of ignoring all the distractions and that outside pressure, but that internal pressure, really wanting to prove to these former guys that, we can be one of those guys, we can be one of those teams, and we can be one of those groups to, make history like they did is huge. It's huge. And that's for every group at Carolina. When you come here and you see the history in your face in the gym, you see all the jerseys hung up, you see the banners hung up, you have no choice but to feel that internal pressure. So we really want to prove to them that, we can be those guys, we can be that team. We want to prove to everybody that HD is that guy, you know what I mean? So we're super excited for it.
You could tell there was a love affair between Trimble and this university. Yes, when he withdrew from the portal, because when he withdrew, he said, "My heart and soul, they belong in Chapel Hill." I still go back to the loss to Clemson last year, where he was publicly calling out his teammates. And then the loss to Ole Miss, where he's at the podium with RJ Davis, and RJ's storied career just came to an end. But the guy that was more visibly upset was Seth Trimble, because he realized that they weren't meeting the standard. And I think that's what motivates him. I do think he wants to have a great season individually. I think he cares more about leaving a legacy that, measures up to what Carolina basketball demands: ACC championships, Final Fours, and national titles. I also think, you go back, he was, I think, the first or second recruit to, out of high school to commit to Hubert Davis, has been here the entire time. And he wants to be part of, the reason why Hubert's going to be here for the next 10 to 15 years. You got to like that as well. He's as selfless a guy that's on the roster, and the motivations that he has aren't for himself, but it's for Carolina to be Carolina on and off the basketball court. And he's not shying away from the pressure, and that's a good thing because the pressure is never going to go away. The spotlight's always going to be on, and it's either going to make you or it's going to break you. It's broken some teams and some players in the past. Let's hope that's not the case this year. Let's hope it makes them into a team that we can all get behind and support 100% unconditionally this upcoming year. That is going to wrap up this edition, though, of the Four Corners podcast, guys. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. It was a busy day on the site yesterday with all the Bill Belichick drama and how much of it was true, how much of it was fake. We just got an update about that, within the last 2 hours. Another article about all of that can be found on the website as well. So if you haven't stayed in the loop and don't know what's going on with Bill Belichick's program, go to HeelToughBlog.com. Anthony has you covered with all of that information. I've got you covered basketball-wise. Next week we'll have the preseason voting stuff. We'll have you covered with articles about that. And then we'll kind of get into some of the fun preseason articles that we write, because we're closing in on about, just inside a month away from the start of the actual season. So we just encourage you, visit the website, HeelToughBlog.com, the latest and best coverage for Carolina basketball, Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Simply search the Four Corners podcast. We'll pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the season. If you're a video consumer of the podcast, the best way to get notified when we go live is to like and follow us on Facebook at Heel Tough Blog, on YouTube at Heel Tough Blog, or follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. If you like any of those pages, it'll notify you the minute that we go live, and we have moved to the video platform as well. So every edition of the podcast will be video streamed. If you're someone that watches the podcast, get familiar with those places, hit those like buttons. That way you're notified throughout the remainder of the preseason and once we get on into the regular season. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the podcast. I want to thank you guys once again for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.